He did not save her because he was kind. He saved her because obsession, guilt, and control are sometimes indistinguishable. Lorenzo sees Isabella first as the donor who kept him alive, then as a liability, and finally as the one human act he cannot reduce to business. From a forensic perspective, his behavior is textbook contradiction. A violent man trying to protect innocence without surrendering dominance. Meanwhile, Isabella displays the psychology of traumatic attachment in real time, drawn not to safety but to the one man standing closest to the source of her danger.
Isabella Moretti was so broke, it was basically her full-time job. At 24, she juggled 2 gigs in Venice, ending every single night counting literal pennies for food. Mornings were for cleaning a clinic in Santa Croce. Nights were spent stitching up fancy clothes for rich people who didn't care. A permanent ache lived in her bones, a constant reminder that one wrong move and her entire world would implode. Her tiny apartment matched her vibe: damp walls, shaky windows, and a heater with a death wish. The only thing that made the dump feel like home was her dad. Giorgio Moretti used to be a big-shot artisan for Venice's rich and famous, but a stroke left him nearly blind. Now his pride was an acid, eating him up because Izzy was the one paying all the bills. They had this unspoken deal. He'd pretend to be fine with it, and she'd pretend she had everything under control. But this Thursday, the universe decided to kick them while they were down with a late paycheck and a pharmacist who wouldn't give them his meds on credit. So Izzy had to run back to the clinic, and what she walked into was straight up chaos. Medics were wheeling a gurney with that laser focus people get when life is on the line. A nurse sprinted ahead while another yelled for plasma. And get this, 3 dudes in black suits were flanking the patient, looking less like family and more like a freaking hit squad. Izzy went full-on wallpaper, pressing herself against the wall as they rushed past. Her eyes locked on a gnarly crimson stain soaking the guy's sheets. An oxygen mask hid his face, but not his sharp jawline or the massive bruise on his temple. The guy on the stretcher looked to be in his late 30s, built like a tank even while bleeding out and wearing clothes that screamed money. He had the vibe of someone who was absolutely not used to being helpless. Just as they passed the blood draw station, his eyes snapped open, and that stare, it hit Izzy like a physical blow. Despite being half dead and in agony, his brain was firing on all cylinders. He did a cold, rapid scan of the whole scene, the hall, the rooms, his goons, the staff, before his eyes landed on her. It lasted a second, tops, but it was a stone-cold assessment, not a plea for help before he was gone. The whole crew vanished behind double doors, leaving behind the smell of hospital cleaner and gunpowder. Izzy was frozen, her heart hammering like a war drum. A sharp voice snapped her out of it, a nurse named Paula. Paula, who was usually cool as a cucumber, was freaking out while checking donor lists. "I need O negative," she barked into her phone. "Not tomorrow, now." Izzy's stomach clenched. Her own blood type was O negative. She'd signed up 2 years ago after a doctor said a blood shortage could be a death sentence. The words had been burned into her memory ever since. She'd registered thinking it was a way for a nobody to offer something priceless. Paula hung up and her eyes immediately found Izzy. After a beat of silence, the nurse closed the distance between them. A few quick questions confirmed Izzy was an O-negative donor. Izzy asked who the guy was. Paula's voice dropped to a whisper. "He collects the kind of enemies who don't mind starting a fight in a hospital." That was all she said. Izzy tried to back out, mentioning she was tired and hadn't eaten since 6 in the morning. "What if I can't do it?" Paula just stared at her. "By the time I track down another match, he might be out of time." On paper, it didn't matter who the guy was. Bleeding to death makes everyone equal, rich or poor. Still, something deep inside Izzy screamed, "No." It wasn't that she wanted him to croak. It was a gut feeling, honed by a lifetime of seeing guys like him walk all over people, treating them like pawns in their own twisted games. Her hesitation came from one simple fact. Guys who rule by fear don't exactly create a peaceful world. But the final push came from the gut-wrenching memory of her own father in the stroke unit, waiting 3 hours for a transfusion. Remembering how she prayed for that stupid IV bag like it was a holy artifact just melted her resistance. "Okay," she muttered. "Show me where to go." 10 minutes later, she was in the donor chair, staring at a form she couldn't even read. A different nurse clocked her small frame, then glanced at the suit watching from the hall, who said nothing. His silent glare was all the confirmation needed. The nurse started prepping the gear. Izzy had always hated needles, but the fake, heavy silence in the room was way worse. It felt like everyone was acting out a scene from a movie. "Is any of his family here?" she asked, just to hear a sound. "It's better if you don't ask," the nurse shot back. Izzy got the message loud and clear. "So, he's important." The nurse's silence was the only answer she needed. A tourniquet squeezed Izzy's bicep. She made a fist. The needle slid in. She winced and looked away, watching her own blood snake through the clear tube. Seeing her life force literally drain out of her was freaking her out, making her realize just how fragile she was. If they took just a little too much, all her problems, the money, the work, the lies, would just be over. She thought of the patient's intense, demanding glare. He looked like a guy who could tell death itself to get lost. "Is he awake?" she asked. "He's in and out." "Does he know who the blood is from?" The nurse gave her a weird look. "I think he's aware that people are trying to keep him from dying." Izzy's eyes fell on a blank label. On a total whim, she grabbed a pen and scribbled 2 words in the corner: "Non morire." The nurse saw her and started to say something, but then just slapped the label on the bag without a word. When it was over, Izzy felt dizzy and cold. She chugged the juice they gave her, waiting for the room to stop spinning. The patient's goons were still posted up in the hallway. One of them took the blood bag from the nurse with a weirdly serious look and beelined for the emergency room. Izzy got up, pressing a cotton ball to her arm. On her way out, she passed an alcove where a doctor was peeling off his gloves. He was talking to an older, silver-haired man in a fancy overcoat. "We've stopped the bleeding for now," the doctor said. "But if there's another complication—" The man cut him off. "There won't be." The doctor looked fried. "That's not how medicine works." The old guy turned, his profile sharp as a knife. This was not the injured man. He had the air of a conciliaire, a guy who lived his whole life next to the throne. His eyes flicked over Izzy, a quick, dismissive scan, before turning back to the doctor. "Tonight," he said flatly, "medicine will do as it's told." The doctor's jaw clenched, but he stayed quiet. Izzy booked it before she could be spotted, desperate to just disappear. The night air hit her like a slap. Venice was dead quiet, its alleys empty, its canals reflecting nothing but black. She pulled her scarf tight and started the long walk home. Izzy's walk home is a total ritual, a way to physically outrun the drama of the night. In her head, she's spinning a story. The blood donation was just a good deed, a way to block out the sheer violence of it all. She gets home after 1 a.m., but the hospital smell clinging to her gives her away instantly. Her father, Giorgio, is waiting up like a freaking watchdog, and his questions about her timing and the smell are gentle but sharp. She just gives him a tired wave, hoping he'll drop it. Her first move is to lie, blaming a long night at work. When he sees right through that, she gives him a watered-down version of the truth. Someone needed blood. That's all it takes to set off Georgia's dad alarms, a full-blown panic attack fueled by knowing exactly the kind of world they live in. To shut down his lecture about staying safe, she moves in close, touching his arm to calm him down as she explains how bad the guy's condition was. His next question, did he live, digs up the trauma for a split second before she shoves it back down, claiming she has no idea. She went about tidying up, a routine she used to keep her anxiety from boiling over. A deep, pulsing ache from the needle stick was a constant reminder of how grindingly poor she was. Nothing had actually changed, but a massive sense of dread had taken root, feeling like a scream trapped in her chest. Sleep was a total bust, a battleground between exhaustion and messed up images. The harsh clinic lights and the patient's eyes, too sharp, too aware, burned directly into her brain. Sunrise hits, but our girl is still running on fumes. She's moving on ninja-level stealth, splashing water on her face so she doesn't wake her dad. Her brain is overclocked, trying to cook up some miracle scheme to dodge going broke. She's mentally begging for another 48 hours, just one more week, basically trying to duct tape her life together with borrowed time. Then bam! 3 sharp knocks slice through the morning quiet. She instantly knows this ain't a neighbor dropping by for sugar. This knock has purpose, it has authority, and it freezes her solid. Nobody in her entire life has ever knocked on her door like that. The noise wakes her dad, who's basically a prisoner in his own chair thanks to his failing body. "Who's that?" her dad grumbles, his voice all scratchy from sleep. "I don't know," she says, and the words feel totally alien coming out of her mouth. The knocking starts again, same rhythm, totally insistent. The second her hand touches the lock, a cold jolt of pure violation zaps through her. It's been tampered with. Somebody was already here and her skin just crawls. An ice-cold feeling floods her system before she even twists the knob. The dude standing there looks dressed for a midnight getaway. His skin is ghost white, like he's lost a ton of blood, and his face is a roadmap of gnarly bruises and a fresh, nasty cut. She knows him, not from a picture, but from a memory burned into her brain. His eyes lock onto hers, steady, crazy sharp, and radiating pure command. Another guy is lurking behind him, standing so still he's practically a statue. Total bodyguard vibes. Izzy tries to use the door as a shield, demanding to know who they are. The first guy just sizes her up for a hot second before dropping his name. Lorenzo Ricci. That name is a threat all by itself, a synonym for all the fear and power running this city. His legit businesses were just a thin cover for his real empire. His whole rep is built on sorting out problems the law can't touch. But it's not just who he is that freaks her out. It's the timing. He shows up literally hours after her donation. "You shouldn't be here," she whispers, and he hits her back with a stone-cold "you're right." When her dad calls out, Lorenzo's gaze snaps to the sound, turning sharp and analytical, with zero compassion in sight. "Let me in," Lorenzo says, but Izzy's gut screams, "No." He takes the rejection without flinching, then drops the bomb. There was a massive security breach at the clinic. Her confidential file is now for sale. The words just hang there, about to crush her. With a terrifying calm, Lorenzo lists off every piece of data they stole, his quiet voice making the threat 1,000 times deadlier. All she can do is shake her head. He's not lying. The second guy, Matteo Santoro, cuts in. his voice super smooth and educated. He holds up a piece of paper, a printout from the donor list. Seeing her entire existence laid out in cold, black and white text makes her stomach turn. When she asks who he is, Mateo just says, "Security," letting a ghost of a smile appear before killing it. A tiny wince from Lorenzo shows a crack in his armor. She sees right away his injury is bad, then calls him out on the lock. Lorenzo just owns it, telling her he got a locksmith at 6 in the morning with some bogus story about a fight with his girlfriend. The sheer nerve of this guy sends a spike of pure rage through her fear. He admits he trespassed, but says he was out of time. That's when her dad gets up, demanding to know who they are. Lorenzo puts up a hand to chill him out before introducing himself. He lays it out for her dad. No sugarcoating. His daughter's good deed saved him, and because of that, she's now a target. Absolute terror explodes across Georgia's face. In that exact moment, Izzy hears a new sound. Footsteps, multiple people coming up the stairs. Mateo confirms it. 3, maybe 4 hostiles. A cold dread clamps down as Lorenzo says she has to choose right now. The approaching footsteps make the air thick with tension. Lorenzo spells out the endgame like a twisted prophecy. The bad guys will either snatch her, grab her dad for leverage, or just wipe them both out to send a message. He deliberately doesn't say which is most likely, letting her own imagination fill in the gruesome details. Her brain starts to short-circuit. This bleeding guy doesn't fit his own scary legend, but the danger feels incredibly real. His face is a waxy, exhausted mask with dark, bruised circles under his eyes. He's standing bolt upright, one hand pressed to his side, hiding an agony he refuses to show. He didn't roll up with 10 goons and a fleet of cars. This entrance, one bodyguard and a bandage peeking over his collar, is way more personal and way more terrifying. The quiet vibe screams private crisis, a danger sharper than just brute force. The footsteps stop right outside. Mateo pulls a silence pistol like it's a TV remote. "We're out of time," he says flatly. The gun steals Izzy's breath. Giorgio's protest, "No guns in my home," is a useless plea against a reality that's already gone. Lorenzo tilts his head, his eyes locked on her as he offers another way. "Then let's leave it." His words just fuel her defiance. "Leave?" she shoots back. "Go where?" "A secure apartment near Giudecca, for now. Then we figure out the next move." "You mean what you figure out?" His face gets hard. "No, I am trying very hard not to." That admission of his own self-control is scarier than any command. A faint scratching sound comes from the door, a tool feeling for the lock. Mateo snaps his gun towards the noise. Lorenzo's voice drops, low and intense. "Izzy." She meets his gaze. "When you help someone like me," he says, "you get the wrong kind of attention. Me being here is the only lead you have. It's the only advantage we have left." Another scratch, then dead silence. Behind her, Giorgio whispers, "Bella, you have to go." She whips around. "What?" His blind eyes seem to find her just by the sound of her breathing. "You think I'm a fool? Men who move like that are not here to talk. If he's right, you don't have a choice." Hot tears burn her eyes. "I'm not leaving you." "You're not leaving him," Lorenzo corrected. "You're bringing him." Izzy just freezes. Lorenzo nods to Mateo. "Get the old man's coat." Before she can even protest, Mateo is already moving, grabbing Giorgio's heavy winter coat off a chair with a quick, efficient motion that wasn't rough, but definitely wasn't gentle. It was the ice-cold competence of a dude who knows panic is a waste of energy. Izzy stood frozen in the doorway. Lorenzo's voice got even quieter. This is the last chance I have to be polite. A new sound echoes from the hall, sharp and final, the soft click of the new lock giving way. Her fear finally snuffed out her anger. She took a step back. Lorenzo came in, and in that single move, with her terrified dad behind her, killers at the door, and the most feared man in Venice, cashing in a blood debt she never meant to offer, Isabella Moretti knew her life was officially over. Her whole world flipped the second she cracked that door. The next few moments were a total blur, way too fast to process. Matteo silently threw the bolt behind Lorenzo, his eyes already sweeping the apartment, instantly spotting every tactical weakness. He clocked the kitchen window, the hallway, the back door leading to a tiny service balcony. The place was a death trap with no good way out. Izzy saw the conclusion on his face just before he said it. The front is a no-go, he said quietly. The balcony, Giorgio said. He was pale but steady, not asking stupid questions. He took the coat from Matteo, his hand fumbling for a second at the sleeve. Lorenzo noticed. Every little sound seemed to hit him differently. He'd only taken 3 steps, but the very air in the small room seemed to warp around his injured body, making the space feel smaller. He leaned on a chair, breathing steady, his face a total blank as he analyzed the muffled noises from the hall. There was no rush, just a deep calm that showed Izzy exactly why people would kill and die for this man. "Are those your men?" she asked, her voice tiny. "No." "How do you know?" "My guys would have announced themselves." That logic wasn't comforting at all. A sharp scrape of metal on the door, then a muffled curse. Matteo's eyes locked with Lorenzo's. "They're using tools." A slow, deliberate nod was Lorenzo's only response. "We leave now." He started to move to help Giorgio, but the old man recoiled from his touch. "Don't touch me." Lorenzo immediately backed off. "As you wish." The fact that this absolute powerhouse of a man would back down so easily just confused Izzy even more. Matteo was already at the back door, eyeing the rusty metal staircase outside. "It should hold us," he reported. Probably. That word just hung in the air, and Izzy heard herself whisper it. Matteo shot her a sharp glance. "There's no time for guarantees." The assault on the front door got louder. Giorgio's hand found her wrist. "Go first," he begged. "No, Bella." With the tension at its breaking point, Lorenzo's voice sliced through the room. "You're going second," he ordered, his calm tone making it 10 times creepier. "Matteo, then your father, you're last." Izzy's eyes went wide. "And you?" "I'll cover our escape." "Bro, you can barely even stand." He locked eyes with her, and the sheer force of his will finally steamrolled her objections. "I can stand long enough." A massive crack from the front door shattered her last bit of defiance. Matteo threw open the balcony door, and a blast of cold, damp canal air rushed in. He stepped out, testing the stairs before holding a hand out to Giorgio. For once the old man swallowed his pride and took it. Matteo carefully guided the old-timer, his hand clamped firmly under the man's elbow. Izzy was right behind them, her heart hammering against her ribs like a drum solo. Down below, the canal was just a black slash of water cut through stone. A lone boat was waiting. Up above, old laundry lines sagged like ghostly traps, twisting in the wind. What used to be a simple view was now a place where people vanished. Behind them, a splintering explosion meant the apartment door was history. A voice yelled. Lorenzo appeared, slamming the balcony door and ramming the bolt home with his good hand. That bolt was a joke, a desperate move to buy them a few seconds tops. He followed her, moving slower than Mateo, but just as deliberately, one hand gripping the rail, the other clamped over his wound. Where the canal got wider, some generic workboat was idling, its chipped white paint screaming anonymity, the kind of boat used to drop off laundry or vegetables. At the helm, a guy in a beanie was smoking, looking like someone who hadn't been surprised since the 90s. He looked Lorenzo up and down. "You've got the look of a man who's already dead." "Not quite," Lorenzo shot back. The boatman nodded at Giorgio. "He's coming too. Get on." Matteo got Giorgio settled under the canvas tarp. Izzy scrambled in after, her legs shaking as she hugged a bag to her chest. Lorenzo was the last one on, and as he hauled himself over the side, Izzy saw it, a flash of pure, unadulterated agony, his jaw clenching so hard his face went white. The mask of control snapped back in a heartbeat, but she'd seen the mortal man under all that iron. The engine coughed to life at the exact second shouts erupted from the alley. Izzy dove under the tarp on pure instinct. They chugged through the water with the boring, ignorable rhythm of a delivery boat, while Matteo stood guard, his eyes glued to the churning water behind them. Giorgio was a statue of pure rage, one hand strangling his cane, the other balled into a fist. Izzy's eyes were locked on Lorenzo across from them. He was leaning against the hull, like he needed it to hold him up. Up close, the wound looked even worse. His skin was gray, a layer of sweat slicked his neck, and a fresh, dark patch was blooming on his shirt. He felt her staring. "Say it," she flinched. "What?" "Whatever you've been stewing on since I showed up at your apartment." The fear inside her crystallized, sharpening into pure anger. "Fine. You had no right to crash into my life, to terrify my father, and to throw us out of our own home like we're criminals." "No," he shot back, his composure rock solid. "I had a responsibility." "To who?" "To the woman who kept me from dying on a hospital floor." Izzy's mouth set in a grim line. "That was anonymous. I gave blood to a total stranger." His eyes stayed pinned to hers. "I'm aware." "Then stop acting like I signed up for some kind of blood debt in your psycho world." "I'm aware of that too." A laugh of pure, unhinged frustration almost burst out of her. "Are you?" "Because it looks like your world just swallowed mine whole." Before he could answer, Giorgio cut in. "Who are they?" Lorenzo turned his unnerving gaze to the old man. "I don't know yet." From the front of the boat, Matteo spoke without turning. That's his way of saying he knows enough to be seriously freaked out. Isabella watched them, a knot of pure dread tightening in her stomach. "That's not exactly reassuring," she said. Matteo's reply was blunt. "It's not supposed to be." Lorenzo then faced Giorgio, his voice low as he laid out the ugly facts of their situation. The hospital attack was a test, he said, just to confirm he was alive. Once they knew, they simply bought the list of blood donors. "Hospitals sell private info like that?" Isabella asked, completely floored. Lorenzo clarified, "Records get made, and anything that's made can be bought." When she pushed him for a reason, his answer was chilling. In his world, everything and everyone was a tool to be used. As her father started to argue, Lorenzo shut him down, his voice quiet but final. "That is exactly why you are on this boat." His statement hung in the air, strangling any more arguments. As the boat cut through canals, Isabella felt trapped in a waking nightmare, her eyes scanning every shadow, her whole body tensed for an attack that never came. The city drifted by, a monument of total indifference. Tourists laughed on bridges, vendors sold flowers, a different reality, completely clueless to the fact that hers had just been torched. The peaceful beauty of it all just made her terror feel deeper and more isolating. After what felt like an eternity but was only 20 minutes, the boat slid toward a crumbling building on Judica, chosen, she realized, because it was born to be ignored. The building looked abandoned, its plaster peeling and its green shutters busted. Matteo moved in first, a ghost in the shadows, before waving them inside. The air was thick with the smell of dust and decay, the phantom of some forgotten warehouse. But the apartment inside was surgically clean, its emptiness so impersonal it was jarring. There was no art, no books, nothing to even hint that a person had ever lived there. This was a place made to hold bodies, not to shelter people. Matteo's voice cut through the silence, laying down the new rules of their 5-star prison. "How long are we stuck here?" Isabella demanded. The answer apparently depended on if this was just a warning shot, a setup for a kidnapping, or something way worse. Lorenzo's face was a tight mask of pain he was barely hiding, a performance of self-control that was its own kind of threat. Both she and Matteo saw how weak he was. When Matteo suggested checking the wound, Lorenzo deflected, turning to Giorgio and making small comforts dependent on the old man taking his medicine. Giorgio's refusal was one last useless act of defiance. Matteo sighed. "I'm telling you, don't make this impossible." Giving up on the pointless struggle, Giorgio went silent and told Isabella to just listen. Once he was gone, she got in Lorenzo's face, demanding the real, unfiltered story. A ghost of a smile, cold and totally humorless, touched his lips. "I've already given you the truth." She knew it was a lie, or at least a version of the truth built to keep her in line. A tiny flicker in Matteo's expression confirmed it, earning him a death stare from Lorenzo. Then, to kill the conversation for good, Lorenzo pulled out a folded paper, a brand new weapon in this psychological war. It was the donor list, filled with photos and handwritten notes. Lorenzo laid it all out with a terrifying lack of emotion. An inside source at the hospital sold 3 names. Her name was on the page. She stared at the paper. 3. The other 2, he explained, were just decoys, thrown out there to see which target the enemy would hit. They hit her. A bone-deep coldness started to spread through her. When she asked why, Lorenzo paused, letting the weight of the moment sink in before dropping the final, soul-crushing piece of the puzzle. "Because they learned that I had asked for your name." The fact he had singled her out was somehow way more terrifying than the faceless enemy. "You asked," she whispered. "I did." Her next question, "Why?" made Lorenzo's expression go completely blank. He told her what was in the nurse's report, a note scrawled on the blood bag. A heavy stillness fell over her. With a chilling calm, he quoted the words, "Non morira." A flush of heat crept up her neck. Her first thought, that was a stupid thing to do, was expertly deflected by his smooth reframing. It was human, a calculated move, meant to build a connection through a fake shared weakness. Matteo jumped in, his eyes locked on Lorenzo's wound. Lorenzo instantly went rigid, wrapped in a shell of pride, which Matteo just met with a cold, clinical look. Lorenzo fired off a series of orders designed to back her into a psychological corner. Her sharp comeback, "And what if I refuse?" was met with his absolute certainty, "You will not." He then pointed to the mark on her arm, weaving her personal sacrifice into the fabric of their crisis. turning her fear into some kind of twisted duty. Before she could even process the manipulation, his composure shattered for a microsecond. It was a blink and you'll miss it glimpse of human weakness that, if Matteo hadn't been there with a steadying hand, she might have missed completely. Matteo gave him a hand, but Lorenzo shot him a look that could kill. Not from the pain, but from the pure shame of being seen as weak. Isabella was totally frozen. The whole myth of Lorenzo, the untouchable titan, just shattered right in front of her. The fact that he actually bled for her was a bigger shock than any threat. Her fear started twisting from straight-up terror into some messed-up sense of debt. For the next hour, things were tense. Matteo was all business on secure lines, while Giorgio just stood there, watching everything. Isabella was just zoning out at the kitchen counter when Lorenzo staggered back in, clearly wrecked from his injury. She heard herself actually suggest a hospital, a classic case of catching feelings for her kidnapper. He immediately flipped it, turning safety into a threat. The hospital is where the danger is coming from. Her normal logic got steamrolled by his dark rule. It makes the doctors themselves assets for the enemy. And just like that, he became the only person she could trust. Then his body finally gave out and he collapsed into a chair. She didn't see him crashing into the chair as a moment of weakness, but as the end of his little performance. A quick look from Matteo said it was time to level up the story and spill some real tea. Isabella braced herself, totally done with his mind games. Lorenzo hit her with this heavy, exhausted stare, the ultimate burdened king act, a power move way stronger than just yelling. He finally started his story. 3 nights ago, one of his company's refrigerated trucks just disappeared. The truck's official manifest said it was carrying medical supplies, a lie she spotted a mile away. Right on cue, Matteo slid a file packed with shipping records and blurry photos across the table. Lorenzo admitted he first thought it was just a random hijacking, but the details screamed this was a pro job. The truck was secretly rerouted, its cargo swapped out, then put back into circulation with perfect forgeries. The ice-cold precision of the whole operation started to sink in. Her question, "So they used one of your trucks?" was simple, but Lorenzo hit her with a huge correction. "One of my legitimate trucks." That's the language of a guy who keeps his crimes neatly organized. His flat statement, for me, wasn't an apology. It was the core of his entire worldview. The cargo he listed, fake blood thinners and black market freezers, painted a picture of a dirty system he had totally mastered. This conspiracy was everywhere, with hooks in shipping, supplies, and even the damn hospitals. She finally gave the nightmare a name: fake medicine. Lorenzo didn't just agree, he threw stolen blood into the nightmare fuel. Her line, "People die from that," made Giorgio physically flinch, but Lorenzo was just a cold, quiet yes. Her guess, "and you found out," got a slight tweak. "I found enough to become a target. This dude is a survivor, not a superhero." The syndicate was also raiding donor registries, basically playing the stock market with rare blood types. She was totally disgusted, but Matteo just hit her with cold, hard business facts. Scarcity drives up the price. Izzy pointed out they were trading human lives like stock, and Lorenzo confirmed that in their world, that's exactly right. This was the moment her brain officially broke, where some abstract evil became terrifyingly real. That file slamming shut was the sound of her innocence getting wrecked. "My donation threw me right into this mess," she stated. "You were drafted," he corrected, trying to spin her reality and her blame. That changes nothing, she shot back. It changes your degree of guilt. Izzy let out a sharp breath. Don't do that. His look was pure calculation. Do what? Talk to me like you can erase a crime with one perfect, smooth sentence. For a split second, his mask slipped, and he almost looked impressed. I'm not trying to win you over. No, she fired back, her voice rising. You busted into my home, ripped me from my life, and terrified my father. Now you're saying my own blood signed me up for a crime syndicate. That sounds exactly like a man trying to control the emotions in this room. Matteo looked to the ceiling, praying for an exit. Lorenzo, however, was a stone wall, just giving a slow, deliberate nod. A fair assessment, he admitted. His calm agreement totally killed her momentum. Before she could recover, he went on. Control is my brand. An apology would be fake. I am giving you the truth because a lie would make you run or fight. I can survive either one. I'm not sure you can. The threat was delivered with the chilling logic of a spreadsheet. Izzy's eyes went back to the file. A photo was clipped to the back. As she slid it out, she went rigid. It showed a loading dock, 2 guys moving crates. A busted corner on a box showed smaller cases inside, each stamped with a gold crest. And then it hit her, a crowned lion. Her heart started hammering. What is it? Matteo asked. Izzy's hand clenched the photo. I've seen this symbol. Lorenzo's focus narrowed to a pinpoint. Where? She swallowed hard. At the workshop. Matteo's brow furrowed. The costume shop. Yes. Lorenzo leaned forward, and the tiny movement was pure predator. Explain. Now. Izzy's eyes were glued to that lion crest. One of Bellini's VIP clients uses trunks with that logo, not for dresses, but for masks, jewels, stuff considered too secret for the regular staff. The client? I don't know his name. She searched her memory. Bellini calls him Continue because he never smiles and wears black gloves. He orders custom pieces for private parties, masked balls. Sometimes he just rents out whole collections. In that single second, Lorenzo and Matteo had an entire silent conversation with just a look. You know who he is? She accused. Lorenzo's tone was dead neutral. I am aware of him. Which is a yes. It means he works through charities and shell corporations, Matteo cut in. Galas, hospital fundraisers, church donations. All of it looks perfect on paper. Izzy stared at the picture, the dots connecting in her head. He was at the workshop this Monday. You're certain? Yes. How do you remember Monday so well? Because that's the day Bellini told me not to look at the client when he came in. A grim, humorless smile touched Lorenzo's lips. And did you listen? Of course. For the first time, Matteo actually looked amused. Izzy ignored him and kept going. Bellini had me in the back sewing. The client was out front on his phone. He was angry, kept repeating the word donors. I just figured he meant rich people writing checks. That's how they talk. But now, her eyes went back to the picture. Now, I don't think he was talking about money at all. The room went dead silent. Lorenzo shot up so fast he got dizzy, grabbing the table to steady himself. Izzy saw it. So did Matteo. Sit down, she ordered, the words out before she could stop them. Lorenzo's eyes were locked on her. Sit, she said again, her tone not asking. You are not authorized to collapse during a debriefing. A corner of Matteo's mouth twitched. To her own shock, Lorenzo actually did it, sinking into the chair like it was a defeat. He clasped his hands, his stare so intense, she instantly regretted flexing on him. Monday, he commanded, his voice low. recount everything. And she did. The trunk, the crest, her boss's panic, the gloved client, and the phrase that was now pure nightmare fuel: keep the clean list separate from the public list. Before she even finished, Matteo was already writing. For a long beat, Lorenzo didn't move. That, he said finally, is the first real lead we've had since the shooting. Izzy was floored. Because of me? Because you were paying attention when anyone else would have looked away. She broke his intense stare. From the other room, Giorgio's cane tapped once. Bella, he called out, his voice weak but firm. If your work is tied to these people, you cannot go back there. I know. And if his enemies have this address, this apartment is burned. She knew that too, but hearing him say it made it heavier. Lorenzo stood slower this time. You will not go back there alone. That sounds like an order. It is. She was ready with a comeback, but the buzz from Matteo's secure phone cut her off. All three of them froze. He glanced at the screen, answered, and after 10 seconds of just listening, his eyes shot to Lorenzo. The nurse from the donation room has vanished. He explained that she left the hospital 30 minutes after the appointment and never made it home. The blood drained from Izzy's face. Nurse Marja, she whispered. Matteo gave a sharp, grim nod. Lorenzo's eyes shut for a split second. When they opened again, they were completely dead inside. They moved faster than I anticipated. Izzy plants her hand on a chair, dropping the bomb. Because of me. Lorenzo's stare intensifies. You're not the only witness anymore. And just like that, the entire game flips. This ain't a rescue mission now. It's a full-blown hunt with a hot new lead, and she's on the trail. Izzy realizes she'd been coping by thinking Nurse Marja was just a random casualty. The real story was way darker. Marja saw too much and got permanently deleted. What do you mean? Gone! Izzy demands, cutting through the vague speak. Matteo pockets his phone. Her shift ended at 7. She clocked out. We have footage of her leaving. After that, she's a ghost. Gone, Giorgio echoes from the doorway. People don't just go gone. Lorenzo's reply is soft but chilling. In this city, they do. Izzy loathes his tone, not mean, just tired, like a guy who's seen this 1,000 times. Then we find her. Matteo nods. That's the play. No, she shoots back. Not your play, mine. You two act like you're the only agents in the room. That's because we're the pros trained for this, they argue. And I'm the one who knows the workshop, she retorts. I saw the crest. I heard the talk about donors. If Marja vanished for what she saw, I'm not sitting on the sidelines while you two run my life. A heavy silence fills the room. Matteo looks to Lorenzo, who's still locked on her. He doesn't even raise his voice. You want to help? Yes. Then get one thing straight. Helping isn't about winning. It's not about being brave. Heck, it's not even always about being useful. Sometimes, Izzy fires back, her gaze solid. Helping means listening when your gut screams to move. And sometimes, she adds, listening is just a pretty word for obeying. A strange look crosses his face before he gives a single, slow nod. Yeah, sometimes it is. In their messed up world, that raw honesty builds trust. Matteo brings them back to the mission, dropping a folder. Bellini opens at 10. VIPs arrive after 12. If our guy is involved, the shop is a perfect front. Rich people, shady billing, and deliveries no one ever questions. Izzy's workplace suddenly reassembles in her mind. The locked back room, the secret fittings, the cases she couldn't touch. All the fancy details now look like straight-up evidence. Matteo's theory is that Bellini is just a pawn whose shop is being used. Giorgio steps in, all protective dad mode. My daughter isn't going back there. Matteo confirms that's a no-go, but then Lorenzo's jaw clenches. No. The word is final. When Izzy protests, he shuts her down, saying the shop has confirmed hostile territory. It's not her call anymore. She hits them with cold logic. Take me off the board and you lose your only stealthy way in. Lorenzo is torn. He knows she's right, but hates the risk. Your cover means nothing if they've made you, he counters. Only if Bellini knows, she says, dodging the obvious follow-up. Before they're stuck, Matteo suggests a new angle. Bellini trusts you. Call him fake being sick. Then claim you left something to see if you can get access after hours. Izzy knows her boss's triggers. He freaks if anyone bothers him after 6 o'clock. If a VIP is there, he'll block me. Him saying no is information, Matteo points out. Lorenzo shifts, hiding the pain in his side, and gives the order. Make the call. Right now? Izzy's question hangs heavy in the air. Now. She pulls out her phone but stops, looking at Matteo. You told me not to use this. He slides a small signal blocking case to her. Put it inside. She does, dialing Bellini from memory. He answers on the 4th ring, his voice already dripping with annoyance. Isabella, it's almost 10. You're late. I'm not coming into work this morning. A beat of pure disbelief hits the line. Bellini stammers, You're not what? I'm sick. You were fine when I saw you last. My situation changed. You can be sick on your own time, Isabella. The Lombardi order is here. I was at a hospital last night donating blood, she lies, her voice perfectly weak. It was an emergency summons. I nearly fainted walking home. That gets his attention, but from alarm, not sympathy. You gave blood without my permission. Are you crazy? You thought bleeding would help? Izzy glances at Lorenzo. His face is a stone mask. It wasn't planned, she says. A frustrated sigh crackles down the line. Fine, stay home, but miss tomorrow and you're off the belladonna fittings. Before he hangs up, she slides the real question in. Did Continro stop by? The silence goes electric. Bellini's voice comes back way too light. Why do you ask? No reason. I left my thimble in the workroom. If he was there, I figured I'd wait. That won't be necessary, Bellini says way too fast. No clients are here now. Izzy feels the focus of Matteo and Lorenzo burning into her. Are you sure? She presses. I can just get it after lunch if... No, Bellini's voice is pure ice. You said you were sick. Be a convincing invalid, Isabella. We'll talk tomorrow. The line clicks dead. Izzy lowers the phone. He's lying, Matteo states. Yeah, what was the tell? He never calls his VIPs clients to the staff. He uses nicknames. Using that word meant he was being overheard. Lorenzo's expression darkens. And mentioning Continro made him shield someone. He was scared, Matteo counters. Izzy fixes her gaze on him. Those two things aren't always the same. No, Lorenzo admits, but in this case, it's a difference that doesn't matter. He pulls out the file, opening it to the photo of the crowned lion. His eyes are glued to the image as he gives Matteo his orders. Scan 6 months of customs records tied to Bellini's shop. Target medical charities. If he's using Gallus for cover, his supply chain will have a rhythm. Matteo's already at the comms station. Izzy gets to her feet. And me? Lorenzo finally looks up at her. You're going to be a target. The role irritates her. That sounds a lot like doing nothing. It means you answer when Bellini calls. You text back in character, and you report any new memory to me the second it surfaces. And if I put you on the ground, you move on my word and my word only. You have a massive need for control. A hint of a smile plays on his lips. It's almost a clinical condition. Before she can fire back, Mateo calls out, "There's more." He walks back in with his tablet. The screen shows a still of Nurse Marga in a service hall. She looks tense but not afraid. And then a detail clicks for Izzy, and a cold dread washes over her. Marga is holding the sleeve of a silver gown with a hand-stitched cuff. It's Bellini's work. "No," Izzy whispers. Mateo looks from the screen to her face. "You know it? That gown's from the Belladonna collection. I finished that exact cuff yesterday." The life drains from her voice. So she was meeting someone from the shop. "Or an associate," Lorenzo corrects. Izzy stares at the image. But why does Marga have it? Giorgio offers an angle they all missed. "Because it was given to her." They all turn to him. "You powerful people see conspiracies everywhere. Sometimes it's simple, a gift, a sign, a silent message for her next move." Izzy looks again and he's right. It's not just a dress. It's a guidepost. "They're leading her," she says, the thought becoming words. Lorenzo's focus on her is absolute. To where? Her mind kicks into high gear, memory finally winning against the dread. She sees dresses, appointment books, manifests, and Bellini bitching about a client wanting a secret show on a private dock. "The San Pietro warehouse," she announces. Mateo's head snaps up. "What is that?" "An old warehouse near the church docks. Bellini used it for hush-hush fittings. No sign, just a side door and a dock right on the canal." Mateo gets it instantly. "Perfect spot to meet a nurse off the books." Lorenzo shot up so fast his chair screeched. This time the pain was all over his face. His hand shot to his side, his cool cracking for just a second before the mask slammed back down. Izzy moved forward without thinking. "You're not going anywhere like that." His eyes were burning holes in her. "And yet, I have to." "No." The word was way more intense than she meant it to be. Something in his eyes flickered. Not kindness, recognition. Mateo said quietly, "If she's right, Marga might still be useful." That one sentence killed all arguments. Lorenzo grabbed his coat. "Then we leave now." Izzy was already throwing on her coat. He saw it and snapped, "You're not involved in this." She stared him down. "You'll have to force me to stay." For the first time, Lorenzo Ricci looked less like a boss giving orders and more like a guy facing a huge problem. The woman who literally saved him with her own blood was not built to be a spectator. This was gonna get messy. Their whole fight lasted less than 60 seconds. They didn't have time for more. "You are not coming," Lorenzo repeated, grabbing the gun Mateo put down. Izzy finished with her coat. "Then shoot me now, because it's the only way." Mateo let out a low whistle of pure respect. Lorenzo turned to face her dead on. "You think being stubborn is your best move?" "Nope," she shot back. "My memory is, I know Bellini's whole routine. I know that building. I can tell a business meeting from a hostage swap. You two are walking straight into a trap made of stuff I get and you don't." He looked like he was about to shut her down again. Then Georgia's voice cut through from his chair. "Take her with you." They all whipped around. The old man's chin was up, his blind eyes aimed at Lorenzo. "I don't like you, I might never. But if my daughter stays here while her mind is out there, I'll have to listen to her pace like a caged animal. She's more useful there than helpless here, trapped by her own head," Giorgio declared. Wow, Dad of the Year, Matteo muttered. It's practical, was the sharp answer. After a long, hard stare, Lorenzo gave Izzy a sharp, final nod. You stay between us. An order from either of us is law. If I say down, you hit the deck. If Matteo says run, you're already gone. Izzy's fingers snuck toward a drawer with Giorgio's paring knife, a little act of rebellion. Matteo caught the move with a tired sigh. I wouldn't do that. She looked at him. Why? Because if tonight goes sideways, that little knife is just going to be one more thing for me to feel bad about. Before she could answer, a burner phone chimed, shattering the mood. After a short, quiet call, Matteo hung up and looked at Lorenzo. Riva will be here in 10 minutes. When Izzy asked who that was, Lorenzo explained, a doctor, one of a handful whose silence I can buy. Dr. Rava showed up even faster. She was in her 40s, with a look that said she took no crap and her hair pulled back tight. She scanned the whole messed up scene with zero emotion. A freaked out woman, a blind man, a wounded mob boss, and his bodyguard in a rundown flat. In the kitchen, she checked Lorenzo's wound with skills that screamed she'd seen way worse. Your stitches failed, she said flatly. I know. Knowing isn't fixing it. I'm not trying to fix it. Right, she agreed. Her eyes locked on the blood blooming under the bandage. You're trying to stay alive while acting like you have a death wish. The comment might have been funny to Izzy if the air wasn't so thick you could choke on it. Super quick, Dr. Riva cleaned and rewrapped the wound, stuck a spare dressing in Lorenzo's coat, and then turned to Izzy. If his face goes gray, sit him down. If he says he's fine, he's lying. If the bleeding starts again, press here. Her finger jabbed a spot right under his ribs. Hard. Izzy nodded before the weight of that order really hit her. Riva then checked Giorgio's vitals, tweaked his meds, and told him he was forbidden from leaving the apartment. The old man put up a fake fight for show before giving in. He'd already won by getting Izzy on the team. In 5 minutes, their boat was carving through the canals. The ride to the San Pedro warehouse was short anyway, but their driver knew all the shortcuts. Matteo was at the wheel, steering the slick black boat with one hand, his eyes constantly scanning for threats. Up front, Lorenzo sat with his coat pulled tight, facing the wind like he was daring it to fix his brain. Izzy faced him in total silence, figuring her own chaotic thoughts were just a liability. Lorenzo was the one who finally broke the quiet. Bellini, he said, give me your read on his loyalty. Money was his only motivation. He had no stomach for danger. He'd crack under pressure. A single hard stare would be enough to break him. A tiny smirk played on Matteo's lips. Lorenzo replied with one sharp nod. That was settled. Izzy watched him thinking, you use fear like a language. It's your whole vocabulary, and you're a total master. His eyes, exhausted and dark but freakishly steady, met hers. It was my first language. She was the first to look away. As their boat docked behind the warehouses, the city's morning buzz had started. The noise of business and bells that hides all the rot underneath. The San Pedro warehouse was set back from the water, its front totally boring, its top windows shut like sleeping eyes over a huge, rusty loading dock. Izzy only knew the warehouse from 2 times, both during the insanity of Carnival, when Bellini needed a private spot for clients who wanted to stay off the grid. She had the main floor memorized. The front room, the changing areas, the maze of costume racks, and the back office with the janky lock. More importantly, she remembered a side entrance in a tight alley A back door Bellini used for shady handoffs away from prying eyes. She led them straight to it. The alley reeked of damp rot and old stone. At the end was a steel door, painted to blend in with the dull gray wall. And no surprise, it was locked up tight. Matteo knelt down, his hands feeling the door frame while his eyes followed the wiring up. The alarm wire's been cut, and it's fresh. They wanted to be isolated, not watched, Izzy guessed. Lorenzo moved in closer, the heat from his body a weird contrast to the freezing air. "How sure are you that Marzia is inside?" "I'm not," she admitted. But the belladonna sleeve was Bellini's signal, and this is his private playground. It's the only logical place to start. "An honest answer," he said, just as a sound leaked through the steel. A woman's soft, quiet cough, that was all the proof they needed. A silent look passed between Matteo and Lorenzo. It was on. A series of soft clicks meant Matteo had cracked the lock. The inside of the warehouse was even colder, the air thick and full of shadows. "She's in here." "I know," Lorenzo shot back. "That doesn't make it any simpler." With his weapon down but ready, Matteo moved past the first row of clothes. His eyes systematically swept the dark corners, the floor, the dividers, and the metal walkway above them. Lorenzo let go of Izzy's arm just to park her behind him. She hated him playing bodyguard, but she hated that she immediately obeyed even more. In the center of the huge room, partly hidden by some mirrors, they found Nurse Marja tied to a chair. She wasn't gagged, but her wrists were rubbed raw from ropes, and a nasty bruise was blooming on her cheek. The silver belladonna sleeve lay on the concrete near her feet like a dropped flag. Her eyes blew wide when she saw Izzy. "You shouldn't be here," she mouthed. "That statement," a voice echoed from the darkness beyond the costumes, "is the first intelligent thing I've heard all day." As Bellini stepped into the dim light, a weird wave of relief hit Izzy. It lasted a second. His face was a mask of pure terror. Not regret, not defiance, just raw fear. His fancy scarf was gone, his shirt collar open. One hand was shaking so badly he had to clamp down on it with his other. From the shadows behind him, another figure took shape. A huge guy in a dark overcoat and gloves. It was Continuo, his face finally revealed. He was older than Izzy expected, maybe late 40s, with silver hair at his temples and the kind of natural authority that makes a room go quiet. She knew his face from a newspaper clipping Bellini had. Something about him funding a church restoration. Adriano Vieri. The flash of recognition in her eyes made him smile a little. "Miss Moretti," he said. "What a shame that being brilliant and being poor go together so often. It really makes staying alive a tricky business." A small, pathetic noise escaped Bellini. "I told them not to bring her into this." Vieri didn't even look at him. "You told them many things." And Vieri just drops the bomb. "Your usefulness has expired." Matteo whips out his piece, but it's a total bluff. Two more goons appear on the catwalk above, holding all the cards. It's a trap. Izzy clocks it instantly, but Lorenzo doesn't even flinch. "You've gotten real theatrical, Adriano." Vieri's smirk just gets wider. "And you, Enzo, grew a conscience." "Oh, he used the name. That's a straight-up weapon." Enzo is what you call this guy if you love him or if you want to twist the knife. Vieri points to Marzia. "Your nurse saw too much. Your donor remembered inconvenient things. And that's why we're here, wasting a perfectly good day in this dump." Lorenzo's voice is flat ice. "You were skimming off hospital supplies." Vieri just shrugs it off. Supplies, donor funds, side deals. The rich get one thing the poor don't. Existence is for sale. I just created the marketplace. Izzy felt sick to her stomach. You were selling blood? I sold access, he corrected, smooth as silk. To matches, to tissue types, to coordinates, to the top of the wait list. You wouldn't believe what people pay for a dying heir or a secret celebrity procedure. Bellini makes a noise that's half begging, half denial. I just rented him the warehouse. I didn't know about the rest. All the friendliness drains from Vieri's face. You knew enough to cook the books. Lorenzo's voice drops to a whisper. You tried to kill me over some invoices. No, Vieri says softly, delivering the ultimate plot twist. I tried to kill you because you started asking where the real donor list was kept. Dead silence. Then Marja, bruised and shaking, speaks up. It's tonight. All eyes snap to her. Vieri finally loses his cool. Marja looks right past Izzy to Lorenzo. The transfer, the big one, the masks, the donors, the secret auction, Belladonna Hall, at midnight. They were using the charity ball as a cover. Izzy's breath caught in her throat. Belladonna Hall was Bellini's biggest gig of the year. A secret masquerade for the city's elite, all for a good cause. Masks required. No names. It was the perfect setup for some seriously shady business. Vieri sighs dramatically. See, this is why loose ends are so boring. His hand moves. So does Matteo's. The first gunshot shatters a mirror, and the warehouse erupts into pure chaos. Matteo opens fire on the catwalk. Lorenzo tackles Izzy behind a rack of clothes. The second she hits the floor, he pivots, pulls his own gun, and fires twice at the corner where Vieri was hiding. Marja's scream rips through the air. Bellini hits the deck as his whole world explodes. A second mirror rains down in pieces as bullets tear through the clothing. A high-pitched whine drowns out the battle for Izzy. Lorenzo becomes a human shield over her, his arm braced on the rack. Stay down. You're putting weight on your wound. Not the time, Marja screams again. Izzy sees Matteo drop one of the attackers with a clean shot, but the other one keeps shooting. Bellini's scrambling for cover. Vieri has vanished behind some huge trunks. We can't leave her, she yells, a battlefield alliance forming in the middle of the firefight. The muscle in Lorenzo's jaw tightens. It was the sheer exhaustion in his voice, the sound of a guy carrying way too much that finally broke through to her. He fires again, then his eyes lock on hers. When I move, you go to Marzia, cut her loose. Matteo has the catwalk covered. Don't be a hero. You free her, then you get behind me, understood? Izzy swallows hard, her throat suddenly bone dry, and nods. Understood. He moves before she can overthink it. 2 shots, then a curse from behind the trunks. She hears Matteo yell from above. Lorenzo creates a split-second window in the chaos, and Izzy sprints. When she reaches Marja, the nurse is just frozen in pure, silent terror. Izzy's fingers find the small knife Matteo had dismissed earlier, and, with shaking hands, she slices the ropes on Marja's wrists. They fall away. Marja collapses against her, totally spent. They have the guest masks, Marja whispers urgently. The numbered ones. The donor catalog is in the black ledger. Where is it? Marcia starts to lift a hand just as another gunshot cracks the air. Lorenzo twists his body, the bullet slamming into his shoulder instead of his chest. He stumbles just for a second, but it's a big deal. Izzy moves on pure instinct, grabbing his arm to steady him, her other hand feeling the instant, spreading warmth of blood soaking his coat. The pain on his face is instantly replaced by cold, calculated fury. Enzo! Matteo's voice echoes, raw and with all rank forgotten. The man now known as Enzo scans Izzy's pale face before his eyes snap to the shadows where Vieri disappeared. "We are moving," he orders, the strain in his voice betraying how bad things really were. This wasn't a tactical retreat. This was a mad dash for their lives. As Matteo lays down cover fire, Izzy helps Marzia. Lorenzo moves on his own, but the growing red stain on his shoulder tells the real story. Bellini just follows them, a blubbering mess of apologies. Fear had boiled his world down to one thing: follow the guys with the guns. A boat was waiting for them at a service dock, proof that Matteo had planned for the worst before the first shot was even fired. As they sped away, the silence on board was crushing. Marzia was huddled under a blanket, her wrists raw, her face a mask of shock. Bellini was stuck on a loop, muttering, "I had no knowledge, I had no knowledge." Matteo's quiet voice finally cuts in, promising bad things if he says it again. The muttering stopped. Izzy focused on Lorenzo, her hands pressing down hard on the wound through the jacket he refused to take off. The bullet went clean through his upper shoulder, a simple wound that was still bleeding enough to prove he wasn't immortal. His face became a stone mask, that shield men put up when they're in pain and don't want anyone to see it. "Keep pressure on it," he ordered. "I am—" "You're trembling." "You've been shot twice in less than 24 hours. My hands aren't exactly steady right now." Her comeback almost made him crack a smile. Almost. At the new safe house, a small fortified apartment, a Dr. Riva was waiting for them. The doctor didn't ask a single question about the new bullet hole on top of the old one. She just cut his sleeve open, patched up the shoulder, and gave him a cold order. If he tried to leave within the hour, she would sedate and restrain him. "I believe you," he admitted. "You'd be smart, too." Izzy watched Marcia sipping a sugary tea while Bellini sweated in a corner. Matteo started unpacking their bag like a detective, laying out its contents. A set of keys, burner phones, receipts, 2 access passes for Belladonna Hall, and a brass coin with a lion on it. The ledger, though, was gone. Vieri had escaped, and he had the evidence. That ugly truth hung in the air until Marcia's voice cut through the tension. The ledger isn't the only version. Every single person in the room snapped their head toward her. She took a shaky breath. Not a physical copy, a data transfer. Tonight's donor list is encoded inside the numbered masks for the hall. Izzy was completely lost. "What is that supposed to mean?" Marcia held her gaze. "The gala uses special custom masks every year, right? Fitted, numbered, cataloged. The rich love all that drama. This year, Vieri built a whole second system on top of that one. Woven into the lining of certain masks are number sequences. They look like inventory codes, but they're really identifiers linked to the donor files." A choked sound came from Bellini. "Oh my God." Matteo's focus sharpened to a razor's edge. "And the black ledger is the key to decode it." Marcia confirmed the masks held encrypted data. "The book translates it into names, blood types, medical histories, locations, emergency contacts, the entire profile." Izzy's summary was grim. "You're saying they turned a charity ball into a marketplace for human donors." The accusation just hung there. Lorenzo, stuck on the couch by Dr. Riva's orders, just watched Marcia with a terrifying stillness. "How in the world do you know this?" Marga could barely speak. "Because some lab tech got wasted and started bragging. Said the rich played God in public while shopping for life in private. I blew him off as a loudmouth jerk. Then I saw the list. The night they brought you in. I watched them pull the clean donor file hours before anything even went down. That's when I knew. Dr. Riva, done with Lorenzo's bandages, stood up. If that transfer goes through tonight, they'll torch the records by morning and keep trafficking people for months. Lorenzo gave a sharp nod. The mission was a go. Which means this ends tonight? Izzy saw his plan and shut it down flat. No, she said. He totally ignored her, talking straight to Matteo. We get inside before the party starts. We grab the ledger, the masks, and Fieri if we can. His head of finance, too, if she's there. Bellini went pale. Claudia Fieri, she runs all the patron assignments. She knows the numbering system. Good, Matteo said without a flicker of emotion. We just got one more name for the list. Bellini looked like he was gonna hurl. Izzy planted herself right in Lorenzo's path. You are not doing this mission without me. Lorenzo's jaw went rigid. Wrong. Belladonna Hall is Bellini's turf. I know half the staff. I fitted 3 of the guest cloaks. I know the backstage better than Matteo, and I probably know it better than you. Then I'll learn. You'll bleed out in their polished marble and ruin the whole party. Her comeback was like a gunshot. That's not the same thing. A ghost of a smile touched Matteo's lips. Lorenzo pushed himself to his feet, ignoring Dr. Reva's death glare. The movement was pure agony. Listen to me very carefully, Isabella. Her full name was a weapon he used, either to push her miles away or to signal a coming storm. You were hunted from your home, turned into a chess piece, shot at, and dragged into this mess because you helped me. I am not walking you into Belladonna Hall if there is any other choice. She held his gaze, refusing to back down. There is no other choice. A thick silence filled the room as Dr. Reva packed her gear and quietly bailed on the argument. Lorenzo's stare seemed to erase everything around them. His voice, when he finally spoke, was dangerously low. At the hospital, he started. When they told me I had a donor, I asked who it was. I needed to know why I was still alive, and then Marga handed me the bag. A hot flush crept up Izzy's neck. No more, he said, his voice turning gentle. She swallowed hard. That was a stupid thing to do. No. His eyes were locked on hers. It's the first kindness she's felt in forever. A pressure that swells in her chest before he speaks again. This is why I knocked on your door, he says. Not because I owed you something, I came because I knew someone with enough soul to write that for a total stranger would be eaten alive by my world if I didn't get to them first. The room becomes incredibly still. Even Matteo is watching, his guard down. Izzy's reply is barely a whisper. You didn't even know me. I still barely know you. That's not exactly a comforting thought. A faint, tired smile touched his mouth. No. Her eyes fell, landing on the proof of his world. A fresh bandage at his shoulder and another one hidden under his shirt. The perfect wall of his composure started to fracture, letting the pain show through. Her words were a power move. You don't decide what risks I take anymore. This defiance rocked him, not making him weak, but making him pause. This was a man staring down the fact that his power meant nothing against a truth he couldn't bully. You think this is about my ego, he shot back. And is there no truth to that? His reply was instant. This is about fallout. To walk into Belladonna Hall with me is to burn what's left of your old life to the ground. A dry, empty laugh escaped her. That life was already ashes by dawn. The words hit him hard, twisting his face with a flash of regret that made him look almost young. A vulnerability that just made him seem more lethal. It was Mateo who snapped them back to reality, his voice all cold, hard strategy. We're losing our window. She has to go in as staff, not a guest. A guest is too exposed, too boxed in. Bellini will fake her credentials without raising flags. Bellini, blindsided, stammered, I will. Yes, Mateo confirmed, his tone leaving no room for argument. Call it a down payment on a massive karmic debt. Bellini's silent plea to Lorenzo was cut off by a sharp order. Do what he says. A pained nod was all Bellini could manage. From there, a plan snapped into place. Bellini would be the point man, flanked by Izzy and Mateo in uniform. Bellini added, his voice shaking, the service staff are invisible as long as they keep their mouths shut. Lorenzo had his own angle. Misdirection. He'd show up late and masked, letting Viri assume he was being either reckless or a no-show, but never calculating. Marja and Dr. Rava would hold down the safe house. Gio, still recovering, put up a weak fight before admitting his injuries made him a liability. In the room where Bellini was having a panic attack, Izzy began her own transformation. She wasn't trying to doll up a killer, she was forging a weapon of total anonymity. Using supplies from Bellini's emergency kits, Izzy started building a whole new face. Her outfit was a uniform of pure invisibility. Plain black pants, a drab blouse, and a simple jacket, her hair pulled back tight. The whole look was designed to make her a non-person, a ghost built for a single job. When she came back, Bellini's relief was obvious. Mateo gave a quick nod. Lorenzo's gaze, though, was sharp and calculating, just like when they first met. You will serve the purpose, he declared. An arched eyebrow was his version of high praise. The cold assessment of a perfect tool, of course. Bellini, fiddling with his cuff, muttered, no going off script unless you absolutely have to. Ironic coming from you. I find my honesty when I'm terrified. Mateo checked his watch. We're wheels up in 8 minutes. The anxiety in the room snapped tight, hardening into a single deadly focus. The last-minute prep was a silent dance. Bellini grabbed the files, Mateo checked a hidden pistol, and Izzy slipped the brass token into her pocket. By the window, Lorenzo moved with a stiff, unnatural grace, fastening a cuff over a new bandage. As people talked outside, his low voice found her. If this whole thing goes sideways, your only job is to get out. Her answer was a firm, silent shake of her head. No. A muscle jumped in his jaw. Izzy! She closed the gap between them, her own voice a fierce whisper. Ditch the noble martyr act. It's a costume that looks terrible on you. A dangerous light flared in his eyes for a split second. You think you know me? I know what you are not. The silence that hung between them was so heavy it felt solid. Then, slowly enough to let her pull away, he reached out. 2 fingers brushed the inside of her wrist, tracing the faint line of an old scar. The tiny touch shot through her like electricity. My death, he whispered, would have given you a much simpler life. Her stare never wavered. Maybe. But the price would have been you, and that's a cost I'm no longer willing to pay. He sucked in a sharp breath, a sound like a bone snapping deep inside. Mateo appeared at the doorway, shattering the moment. Sorry to interrupt whatever the hell this is. The car's here. Izzy was the one who pulled back first. Lorenzo's hand fell as they headed for Belladonna Hall. It was a whole ecosystem where masks, money, and murder were traded by men who saw souls as just another product. For Izzy, this was a world she'd only ever seen from the service corridors and loading docks. She knew the palace's secret gears, but she'd never witnessed the golden lie it sold out front. The mansion was a stage set for some epic drama. Music bled from stone corridors where uniformed staff drifted like ghosts among the masked elite. Gold candlelight danced as fake laughter bounced off marble walls. Underneath this shiny surface, loyalties were for sale. Bellini stormed in on a wave of pure nervous energy, greeting the head steward before launching into a storm of complaints. His act was perfect because it wasn't an act. Izzy realized his greatest weapon was mixing his professional fury with his raw, primal fear. A pace behind him, Matteo had the blank expression of expensive security, a garment bag slung over his arm. Izzy was perfect assistant, her eyes glued to a clipboard. They slipped through the party like ghosts, totally unseen. This, Izzy saw, was how the rot worked. The powerful are completely blind to the people who serve them. In the VIP mask room, they found their first clue. 42 velvet boxes were on display, each marked with a patron's code. The masks inside were a zoo of fakes, from glossy demons to feathered angels. Using Bellini's rising voice as a soundscreen, Izzy scanned the collection. Tucked in the lining of every sixth mask was a tiny numeric code stitched in silver. Margia had been on the money. Izzy's face showed nothing, but her gut clenched at the empty spot where the ledger was supposed to be. Instead, Claudia Veri was standing there, talking quietly to two guys in tuxes. Younger than she pictured, maybe 35, she had a cold, elegant vibe, wearing no jewelry except for a single flawless diamond. So, Vieri played the part of the do-gooder, but Claudia was the cold-blooded shark driving the entire operation. Finishing her talk, she walked to the display. Izzy pretended to be obsessed with some fabric. Claudia glanced right over her, her gaze locking onto Bellini, who was turning his fear into a massive theatrical scene. "Signora Veri," he yelled, "I'm not responsible for the piece if your people keep messing with the art." Her smile was pure ice. "Luckily, Signor Bellini, we pay you for talent, not for insurance." His genuine tantrum was the perfect cover as she made her exit. The second she vanished through an arch, Matteo dropped the objective. Rear chamber, left passage. Izzy gave one sharp nod. Bellini's epic rant was the perfect wall of noise, letting Matteo shadow Claudia with the stealth he was known for. After a strategic 3-second pause, Izzy grabbed a pin tray and moved out. The hall split off from the main ballroom, leading to private suites. Rooms designed for sketchy deals and hidden sins. A single guard in a tux stood watch in front of a polished black door. This guy wasn't hotel security. He was the cleanup crew, the permanent kind. Matteo went in first, claiming he had adjustments for patron 27, and got waved in with a quick look. 10 seconds ticked by. Izzy came next, muttering about a request from Signora Veri for some new clasps. The guard's extreme boredom was practically a physical force as he let her through. Inside, beauty was just a mask for total corruption. Beneath a painted ceiling, the stolen ledger was sitting wide open on a table right next to 3 mask cases, 2 laptops, and files tied in black silk. Vieri was by the fireplace, his face covered by a fancy mask, chatting with Claudia and some director from a medical charity. 2 other guys were inspecting a mask like surgeons. A cold pit formed in Izzy's stomach. This wasn't about art. It was about business. Claudia's eyes landed on her first. "What is that?" Izzy held up the tray. "Replacement hooks, Signora. You asked for them 10 minutes ago. I got here as fast as I could." Claudia's glare intensified. "Who sent you?" Before Izzy could spit out a fake name, a different voice cut in. "I did." It was Lorenzo. He stepped out from another door, wearing a dark coat and a plain black mask, moving like he owned the entire building. But that calm was a total front. His every move was calculated, his body too rigid. Though it was covered, Izzy could sense the fresh bandage straining under his shirt. Vieri turned around. "Enzo," he said, his voice dripping with fake friendliness. "I was wondering if you'd bring the hammer or the scalpel. Of course you'd bring one disguised as the other." Lorenzo slowly pulled off his gloves. "You sold hospital data, you sold patient files." Vieri just waved it off. "I simply created a new market. This city was for sale way before I showed up." The foundation director started to look nervous. Claudia went completely still. "You shouldn't have come here while you're injured." Lorenzo's eyes never left Vieri. "And you shouldn't mistake a wound for a weakness?" What happened next was a war on two levels. On the surface, it was all words. Vieri talking about clients, Lorenzo demanding names, Claudia hiding behind professionalism, the director trying to become part of the wallpaper. But underneath all that, another war was about to explode, one of pure, brutal violence. Matteo blocked the exit, a silent guardian. Izzy drifted closer to the table, a pawn making a critical move. Outside, a guard's disinterest was sharpening into suspicion. The masks on display now looked less like art and more like trophies from the damned. A ghost of a smile touched Vieri's lips. "You, of all people, understand the math of value. You know loyalty is just another product. I understand boundaries," Lorenzo shot back, "and you are here, pretending you still have some." The comeback hit like a punch to the gut. Izzy saw it then. For the first time, Lorenzo's fury completely unleashed. Not hotter or crazier, but terrifyingly pure. "You profited from public wards," he said, his voice dropping. "You trafficked donor records. You stored weapons in a blood bank and called it practical." Vieri's smile vanished. "And you rule your part of this city with an iron fist and call it order. Save me the lecture." That word, boundary, that Lorenzo used, finally clicked for Izzy. Guys like them were architects of their own reality, bending the entire city to their will. But Vieri had desecrated something Lorenzo considered sacred. This wasn't just another dirty deal. This was selling human suffering for a quick buck. That was the boundary. As Claudia's hand reached for the ledger, Izzy made her move. The tray became a weapon, flying across the table with a metallic crash. The ledger slid toward the edge just as Matteo burst through the door. The fragile calm in the room completely shattered. The hallway guards stormed in, gun out. Matteo instantly became a human wall in the doorway. Claudia's fingers grabbed for a donor file but found nothing but air. The foundation director flinched, swearing under his breath. Vieri lunged for the ledger, but Lorenzo moved like lightning to counter him. They slammed into the table, sending a lamp crashing to the floor. Izzy now had the book, its weight feeling like a ton of secrets and stolen lives. A laptop slid across the rug. Claudia charged at her, fueled by pure rage. The executive was gone, replaced by a woman staring into the abyss of her own ruin. Izzy instinctively blocked the attack with her shoulder, sending Claudia stumbling back. An order from Matteo sliced through the chaos. Lorenzo and Vieri crashed into the fireplace. A gunshot exploded behind her, a deafening blast in the small room. The ballroom doors were flung open. The music cut out instantly. A shockwave of alarm shot through guests. Masked faces spun toward the suite, just as Bellini performed the bravest act of his life. He screamed, not elegantly, but with the raw power of a man weaponizing his own panic. "Fire!" His voice tore through the fancy hall. "Fire in the patron suites!" The pandemonium was immediate and absolute. The perfect little world outside the door dissolved as guests started to stampede. A footman bolted. A shrill emergency alarm started screaming. Cries for help, for security, for water filled the air. In that single moment, a secret war became a public circus. The one thing Vieri's power couldn't control. Knowing this, Claudia lunged again, not for Izzy, but for the collection of expensive masks. In a split second, Izzy took a huge gamble. She tore the lining from one and flung the silver-threaded band out into the hallway. It flashed in the chandelier's light, a glittering piece of proof for the hysterical crowd. She did it 2 more times. Their coded crimes were now on full display for the world. "What are you doing?" Claudia shrieked, her voice cracking with panic. "I'm ending your deniability," Izzy shot back. Matteo had already taken down the director and the guard. Bellini's warning was still echoing down the now crowded corridor. By the fireplace, Lorenzo and Vieri were tangled in a raw, ugly fight. This wasn't a duel for control, but a savage need to completely destroy each other. Vieri's fingers clawed for a dropped gun. Izzy saw it. "Enzo!" Her voice cut through his rage. Lorenzo spun, slamming Vieri's wrist against the stone hearth. The gun went off, firing into the floor. Matteo crossed the room in 2 strides, kicking the weapon out of sight. The fight was over, not pretty, but definitely final. In less than a minute, the situation had spun completely out of control. Police flooded the hall as guests yelled about smoke and an assault. Claudia, now restrained, was babbling some story about files for a charity crisis. The director was silent, his face white as a sheet. Vieri, his calm, thin mask over a split lip, said nothing as Lorenzo stood over him. The ledger lay between them, an open confession. When an officer yelled, asking who was in charge, 5 different voices, including Bellini's, all answered at the same time. 2 hours later, the Venetian sky was shifting from black to a dark, early morning purple. Routine statements were being taken. Lawyers had magically appeared. Names too big to be ignored were already spreading through the city's grapevine. The proof, files, masks, the computer, and the ledger, was all logged before Vieri's influence could make it all disappear. Marzia's testimony would be the final seal. On the landing, Izzy pulled her coat tighter, feeling the adrenaline crash. Lorenzo came out a few moments later, his own mask now gone. He looked exhausted, older, but somehow more present. A smear of dried blood stained his cuff. Under his ripped jacket, his shoulder was wrapped in gauze. A bruise on his temple was getting darker, but his eyes were still laser-focused. A long silence hung between them. "You threw the masks into the hall," he finally observed. "It was an impulse." "Yes." A faint, tired smile appeared on his face, and it was absolute. She looked away from him. "I saw no other way to make it too big to hide." "You saw the only way." Another quiet moment passed, tense but not angry. He closed the gap between them, giving her every chance to back away. "I warned you that simplicity was finished," he said, his voice quiet. "It is." She hit him with the facts. "I came here so your world wouldn't swallow me whole." And locked eyes. It didn't. He had to give it to her, his voice low. "No, you wouldn't let it." A wave of pure respect, not obligation, washed over her. "So what's the play?" she demanded. His rundown was a checklist of devastation. "Vieri's contained. Claudia will fold or fall. Bellini's a state asset. Marcia is safe. Your dad gets ghosted by Dawn." "And you?" she shot back. He hesitated. Me. A flicker of something crossed his face. You decide if I make my exit now. This was it. The moment the monster was supposed to show its teeth, but he just didn't. Instead, he just stood there, busted up, deadly, and letting her call the shots. She ran the tape back, the hospital, the gore, the warehouse, the book, and it clicked. Lorenzo Reacci's ultimate flex wasn't the control he took, but the power he was willing to give up. I don't think you're allowed to just walk away, she said, calling his bluff. That tired smile came back. No. He closed the last bit of space between them. Isabella. She corrected him, voice low but solid. Izzy. His eyes held a promise that she knew was a lie, but it was a lie she'd always want. Izzy. If I stay, there are no strings, no debts, no favors, no gratitude. She swallowed hard. And you stop picking my battles for me. He agreed without a word, and a sound escaped her that just broke all the tension. He moved in, slow motion, testing the waters of her new power, and she met him with pure stillness. He took her silence as a green light, and their connection wasn't an act of claiming her, but a raw confirmation that they had made it out alive. Their entire world just got flipped upside down. Later, the Venice scenery was a beautiful lie, hiding the chaos. Our girl, Isabella Moretti, who was already a target because of her status, started her day expecting the usual kind of trouble. What she got instead was a trial by fire, brutal trauma, and a mind-blowing reveal about the one guy whose plan to protect her had backfired spectacularly. Her life didn't get blown up by some obvious attack. The dead giveaway to her mental state is her choice to stay put when she could have just walked away free and clear. This so-called choice is a classic sign of traumatic bonding, where her brain basically rewrote a terrifying ordeal and turned it into some kind of twisted love story.
Lesson: trauma becomes destiny when fear is allowed to choose a person's identity. From a psychological standpoint, Isabella and Lorenzo form a compelling dual study in survival adaptation. She is a civilian under chronic stress. He is a high-functioning authority figure shaped by prolonged exposure to coercive systems. Their attachment emerges under extreme threat, which heightens intensity, accelerates trust conflict cycles, and exposes the psychological architecture beneath both of them. Isabella begins the story in a condition of scarcity trauma. Poverty has trained her nervous system into constant anticipatory vigilance. She monitors rent, medicine, food, and her father's fragility. This is important because people raised under prolonged insecurity often develop an unusually strong response to others' suffering. They understand precarity not abstractly but somatically. That is why she donates blood despite exhaustion. It is not irrational altruism. It is trauma-informed empathy. Lorenzo, by contrast, exhibits traits associated with controlled dominant structures, hypervigilance, compartmentalization, authority reflexes, and a learned dependence on control as a defense against chaos. He enters every room prepared to manage outcomes. Even wounded, he changes locks, reroutes escapes, assigns roles, and narrows options. This is not merely arrogance, it is a nervous system organized around preemption. The friction between them is therefore inevitable. Isabella experiences control as erasure. Lorenzo experiences lack of control as danger. Both are correct within their own psychological realities. The antagonistic network in the story represents a more advanced pathology, systemic narcissism. Vieri does not merely exploit people, he converts vulnerability into prestige. He places donor data inside elite rituals and disguises predation as discretion. This reflects a classic feature of malignant power structures, the moral inversion of cruelty into necessity. Once that inversion is socially rewarded, participants stop seeing themselves as perpetrators, they see themselves as managers of difficult realities. That is the environment in which trauma becomes contagious. Now consider the core lesson. The story repeatedly places Isabella in situations where fear could define her. She could become passive after the donor leak. She could dissociate after the home invasion attempt. She could retreat after the warehouse shooting. Psychologically, all would be understandable, yet she does something crucial. She continues to act without surrendering her moral vocabulary. She still distinguishes right from wrong. She still reacts with disgust, care, and conscience. That preservation of moral language is what prevents trauma from fully rewriting her identity. Lorenzo's arc is subtler. He begins from a world where fear is instrumental. Something changes when he encounters uncalculated compassion. Isabella's note on the blood bag destabilizes his assumptions because it introduces care with no strategic purpose. For a man accustomed to transactional loyalties, that is psychologically disarming. He is forced to engage with a form of attachment not rooted in power. This is why he becomes increasingly careful with her autonomy. He is learning imperfectly that protection without consent replicates the violence of possession. Thus, the life lesson is this: fear is unavoidable, but identity built entirely around fear becomes a prison. One may use fear for vigilance, but not for self-definition. Isabella survives because she refuses to become only a victim. Lorenzo evolves because he begins to resist becoming only a controller. Both characters are pulled toward their trauma patterns, yet the story rewards the moments in which they step beyond them. Clinically speaking, healing does not always look gentle. Sometimes it looks like setting boundaries in a safe house. Sometimes it looks like speaking truth during a crisis. Sometimes it looks like refusing to let another person decide one's fate in the name of protection. In that sense, the story is psychologically precise. Recovery is not the absence of danger. It is the reclamation of agency within it.